let's take a look at how we can add video options into your games. Alright, so to get us started, I went ahead and created a few little options here that we're going to go over. So we're going to have MSAA, resolution, window mode, and FPS in the form of an options menu, which is a drop-down bar that we can use. And then we have Vsync and HDR with just associated checkboxes that we can use to turn HDR and Vsync on or off. So now if we head on into our script, I just have attached to our main node for this setting, or for these settings. And I've just created some onReady variables just to make our accessing all of our drop-down menus and boxes. And inside of our ready function, I just have one function called add options with a bunch of functions created within there that we have not, obviously I haven't filled out yet. So the way we're going to do that is we first need to have our list of options to go through. And these can be some very common options that you can put in there. For example, I'm going to have my resolution options. I'm just going to put these ones in here. 2160 by 1440, 1920 by 1080, 1280 by 720, 1024 by 600, and 640 by 480. Now, you can put whatever resolutions in there that you want. I've just put these ones up here just because they are some of the most common ones that you'll come across, seeing as most games are going to be in that 16:9 aspect ratio. Now, I'm also going to add in some options for our windows. And the ones we're going to use for that is windowed, borderless, and full screen. Our MSAA options is going to consist of off, 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, and 16 times. Right, I have a change this to MSAA opt. Okay, just get rid of my double variable names there. Alright, now you can do the same thing for FPS, since we're going to have that as a drop down as well. FPS options. For these, I'm just going to set to 0, which is unlimited. Or rather, we can actually type that out. And then I'm going to use 30. Whoops. 60. 100. And we can go 120. There we go. And of course, you can add as many options as you want to have in there. And I did the same thing there, so we'll just go with OPT. There we go. So now we have some FPS options, MSAA, window mode, and resolutions. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to get all of these added into our game. Or rather, added into our options, so that when we open it up, we can actually have some choices here. Because right now, they're all empty. Alright, so how are we going to do that? We have our menus, or we have our options, our drop downs, and we have everything that we want to be put in there. Now, we could hard code all this stuff in, but we're not going to, which is why we created our variables at the top to hold all of our different resolutions and modes and whatever other options we want in there. Now we can go back up there at any point and add new options in there, and it'll work perfectly fine. So if you want to go ahead and say start with 16:9 and add 21:9 options in there, you can certainly do that. So let's start off with our modes. We're going to go ahead and get every item. So all of our window modes. Remember, that's our windowed, borderless, and full screen. So we're going to say for mode in window modes. So for each of these options that we have, windowed, borderless, and full screen, we're going to go ahead and grab our window options variable that we created back in our onReady, and we're going to add item. And inside here is going to be a string of what we want to add. In this case, it's going to be mode. Now, if we take a look at that and we were to run that, you can see we now have windowed, borderless, and full screen all up in here. And if you have a default that you want to set for your game, all you have to do is just go into your window options, and we can take a look at dot selected. And does this take a... Alright, we can just set it. So you can just set the selected. I'm sorry, it's not selected. We want select. Selected, it's just going to tell us what it is. So then we can put in an option here. So if windowed was our default, we could do 0. If borderless is our default, we can do 1. And if full screen is our default, we can put in 2. So doing this, if I go ahead and run this now, so we'll see I have index 2 as our default, which is full screen here. So if you want to set a default in here that's not the first option, that's all you have to do. Now for me, that's perfectly fine in the way it's set. And we can do the same thing for our resolutions. So we can say for res in resolutions. And we can get our resolution options. Dot add item. And the item that we add in, of course, is going to be res. Alright, so now we have everything selected and it's all being run inside of our ready function. We should now see everything is fully selected here. And if you have any options that you want to set as your defaults, you know how to do that. You can go ahead and set your defaults. So now we have our options in here. We need our options to do something, right? We need everything to work. So for that, we're going to need all of our signals. And for that, we can go ahead and do, for our drop-down buttons, or our option buttons, we're going to connect the item selected signals to this. And for our boxes, our checkboxes, we're going to get the pressed. So just go ahead and take a quick run through all of those. Now, it's worth noting as well that we should probably make sure that our boxes are toggled. Item selected. And our last one is the Vsync box. So if we go ahead and run that, they should, if I'm not mistaken, by default. Yep, there we go. Alright, so make sure that all that works. And we now have all of our signals connected down here for our selected items and our boxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to move my HDR box down just to keep my boxes together as well as my options. I'll put an extra space in there. Remove spaces there. Alright. Now when we get an option selected, we need to know what option we have. Now we are getting the index passed into us. And using that index, we can go ahead and get the text of it. And of course, what we need to do is we need to match that text. So let's start out with, what are we going with? Our resolutions. So we start out with our resolution, and we'll say var res choice equals our resolution options dot get item as text, or not as text, I'm sorry, get item text. And that takes an argument, and that argument is an integer, and that integer is the index that we get passed in. So this is going to tell us the text, so the actual string that we put in. So this is going to give us back our 2160 by 1440, 1920 by 1080, etc. as we go through that. So we're going to now convert that into something that we can actually use. So we'll say window size as a new variable. And we'll set that equal to our res choice. And we're going to split that by the x so that we have two numbers in here. And that'll actually take a couple arguments if we take a look at that. Allow empty. We can set that to true. It's true by default. And the maximum split, 0 is being unlimited. I'm just going to set that to 1. So we're going to have a maximum split of the 1. And now we can take these options here, our window size, and apply that into setting our window resolution. So if we go ahead and we do os.window size, we can take that and set that equal to a vector 2. And all we're going to pass in here is our window size, our x, which will be our 0 index, and our y, which will be our 1 index. So now you'll notice that will resize your window. However, your window may not necessarily reposition itself. So you might want to keep that in mind in how you want to position it. So if you want to take it to, of course, in the center, then you need to take into consideration the window or the person's monitor screen resolution, what half of your window resolution is, and you'll need to do those calculations if you would like to reset it. So if I were to run this right now, you're not going to see it, but I can come in here and I can go like this. And you can see that cut off when I selected 640 by 480 because of my project settings. I'm not set to the viewport or 2D or any of that. So you can kind of get an idea here as I make changes. Whoops. We don't want to move that. We want to move this. So you see if I move this out here. So you can see our resolution is certainly changing as we go through this. Just keep in mind that you may or may not want to move the window position based off of the resolution. That's completely up to you. And we can now move on down. We can now move down to our MSAA options. And we're going to do the same thing, right? We got to know what the option is that was selected. So we're going to come on down and we're going to put in our MSAA option. We're going to get, there we go, options. So we're going to set that to our get item text. So we're going to know what option we have. And then using that, we can do if statements or we can match our MSAA option here. Whoops, we need to have a colon. And a match kind of works like an if statement. You can use a match for one match arguments. Let's see. So we want to go with, we have off as an option. We have ×2 is in order to set the MSAA, what we need to do is we need to get the viewport. So we're going to use get viewport. We're going to get MSAA option on the viewport. And when it's off, we're going to set viewport.msaa disabled. And likewise, when we go to our ×2 option, we can do get viewport, get the MSAA option, and we're going to set the equal to viewport.msaa underscore 2 times. And this is going to go the same way for 4, 8, and 16. Obviously, just a change in number. There we go. And that's all we have to do in order to set our MSAA options. Our window options. Once again, we're going to get the same thing. We need to find out what option we have selected. Let's call this mode. This will be our window options. There we go. Oh, I have an E on the end. There we go. So we're going to set that to the text of whatever options we have listed. And then again, we can go ahead and just match mode. Now for this, we just have to logically set our borderless and full screen options. So obviously when it's windowed, we're going to have full screen turned off. And when it's We're also going to have borderless turned off, set both of those to false. And now I can grab both of those. And now when it's borderless, obviously full screen is false, borderless is true. And then when it's full screen, we can set borderless false and full screen true. So full screen goes to true and borderless can stay false. Now when you select your options in your drop down here, now again, you're not going to see it on there because you don't see the window anyway, but now we can select borderless and window it and you can see that'll change. I'm not going to hit full screen just because of the way OBS acts up when it captures. It might just turn black and I don't want it to mess with the recording, but you can see your options and there do change. That leaves us with our FPS options, which we can go with the same type of thing here. We can go get our option. We'll go var FPS equals, of course, FPS options dot get item text, pass in the index. Alright, so now that we have this, we can, you could match it. However, in this case, since we're just going to take that value that gets put in, we're just going to directly set that. So we'll say engine dot, what did we call it? It's set target FPS, like that. And that takes an argument of a value, and that value is going to be FPS. But remember, this is a string, so we need to turn it or convert it into an integer. We do have to make one check because we actually have one bug here that I wasn't considering. Or did we set? Yeah, we set it to, I said unlimited. If you do use unlimited here as an option, keep in mind that this is not going to be a number, or if it does, it's going to come up as 1, which is going to be a problem. So what we can do is we can say match FPS. It's unlimited. And that's got a capital U, if I'm not mistaken. We're just looking at it. If it is, then we can set this to an int of 0, because 0 is unlimited. And now what we can do is we can use an underscore here as an option, and that's a wildcard. That's like, it's like an else inside of an if statement. So we're going to match the FPS, and if it's unlimited, we're going to do this. Else, it's covered by the wildcard, which in our case, we're going to convert whatever FPS is into an integer. So if you have 0 up here instead of unlimited, you don't have to do this check, but if you have unlimited and then you have numbers, you can solve that by using this check here. And all that's left is our HDR and our Vsync. So if we go ahead and take a look at that, this is going to be based off of whether our thing is pressed or not. All right. So when our box gets pressed, we're just going to get viewport, and we're going to access the, I'm sorry, this is HDR that I was doing there. For Vsync, we have to use OS and Vsync enabled. And we're going to set that equal to our Vsync box dot press. So if it's true, then Vsync will be enabled. If it's false, it'll be off. And we'll do a similar thing for our HDR box, which you saw as I was typing in there. We're actually going to be using get viewport, and we're going to access the HDR property of that. So we're going to do get viewport dot HDR. And what we're going to set that to is, again, our HDR box dot pressed. Now, if you have defaults by this, you can, of course, set the boxes to be checked or unchecked, or set your options to be on or off. And if we come in, all of our options should work perfectly fine. We already tested resolution and our window mode, HDR, no bugs, no errors, same with Vsync, and our options here. Awesome. And if you really want to take a look at it, you can go ahead and you can print out your options. So if I were to just print os.vsync enabled, and you can see it's true and false. So we can turn Vsync on and off, and you see that that is working. All right, so that's everything that you need to do to get yourself some basic options in there for your games. It's not too hard to do. It just takes a little bit of time to set up. Easy to do. You can take this and you can apply this to however you want your option menus to look. but there's how we can do our drop down selections and our checkboxes and that. But alright, that'll do it for this video. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next one.